Emma, maybe you want to talk about your research, because you talked about your pet project.
Excellent. So within the PIP, I kind of saw that there were two different ways the school can take it. So the school can either be really accepting and be like, great, you can be our pin-up girl, look how great this is, and we're supporting, you know, young youth and as they find themselves, or it's completely like a rainbow elephant sitting in the room. And no one wants to discuss it. Everyone's willing to make assumptions and talk about you behind your back, and that's kind of the two ways I saw in my research that schools would deal with it. And neither is really healthy. Neither, I think, is good, because even when you're using that person as a pin-up, you know, most of what we've been saying is that sexuality doesn't have to define you. You know, you're not BK who's gay, and you're not, do you know what I mean? It's not your defining factor. And I think that's the issue within schools when they try and make it out to be the only thing about you. People have so much more to them than their sexuality, you know, who they love. That's one aspect of who you are. And I think also, you know, when you have the situation where no one wants to talk about it and no one's willing to sit down and have that conversation with you, or, you know, with a group of people, that's as damaging as putting someone up on a pedestal, you know, because straight away you're thinking, I'm not normal. You know, who I am is not okay. And that's, you know, we've seen the statistics, it's damaging children and we're losing lives because of it. And, you know, I think that it's so important that we start changing this culture, because that's when we're going to stop losing lives to an epidemic. I would have loved to have found a way forward, but it's such a complex issue and there's going to be no magic answer, but it's people like you who can start making the difference. It's people having those conversations, it's people being brave enough to be pioneers, you know, to start talking and start accepting and really just being open to students and letting students be whoever they want to be, regardless of gender or sexuality.
It's about starting the conversation from somewhere. And I think as we're at Purple, we are student run. I'm the only non-student now, and I was a student up until about 4 months ago, so I don't count. But my role is to support these guys, and if anyone, the one thing that I'm most passionate about is making sure these guys get to do what they want to do and work in the ways that they think are going to change the environments that they're in. And I think so, from the session before, the 2010 session when Mel was talking, there are huge limitations on teachers, so it's well and easy to say, yeah, teachers should go and do all these things. You know, it's easy for me to sit here and go, teachers should educate in PDH, they should just take it and they should just talk about, you know, safe sex for everyone, and then every staff member and every faculty should just introduce queer characters everywhere. Really easy to say that. There are some simple things that can be done, but at the same time there are huge limitations and huge risks that teachers are facing. And so for us, I think one thing that we've really seen is students working, so bottom-up approach is actually working. I don't know how much of you guys know what Wear It Purple is about, but so Wear It Purple Day is an annual initiative, and pretty much we ask people to wear purple to show that there's someone who supports the fact that everyone has a right to be proud of who they are. That started by students taking the idea to their school, and we've grown from some minor amount of schools to 20 schools to 80 schools. And that is not all students, but primarily students. You know, a lot of the time that's been one teacher in a school and they've just gone, we want to see something happening, and they've started it, and we always encourage them to get students on board. But a lot of the time, it's just students going to a supportive teacher or having the guts to go somewhere in the school and go, this is what we want. We want to know that our school is supportive. The schools have to be supportive of them in the public system. Whether they're willing to act on that or not is a very different story. But if there's people willing to put time and effort in, that's something that's happening. So when we talk about, you know, this culture change, the first step is accepting that there needs to be a culture of support. And in my mind, it's students first is how it's going to happen. And so you guys who are in a position to support students to do whatever and to encourage that are also in a really powerful position, because it's much like, you know, like it's easy for us to say the executive of the school should bring in all these systems, and that's fantastic, and that is what will make long-standing changes, but that's probably going to start somewhere else first. And those students need to be supported to do that.
By empowering young people to take control and charge in their own environment, you know, we take a disenfranchised young community and we then give them back the power that has been taken from them. You know, we give them the opportunity to change their own environments and to be comfortable about who they are, and you know, and to make the world that they're in reflect them.
So, I identify as genderqueer or bi-gender, and people are generally pretty okay with the identity of it, but they don't really understand it, and that's mostly why they're okay, because they're like, well, I don't get it, so I can't really have a problem with it. And but the biggest issue is getting the pronouns right. Like, even these guys, they're completely understanding, they're so supportive, but they'll be like she, and then they'll be like, oh no, whoops.
We tried really hard.
No, you're totally supportive, and I love you for that. But like, that's a really big issue, and something that could so easily change that is just like being taught that there is other options, because until like the end of year 12, I had no idea there was other gender like options. Like, I knew there was transgender, but I didn't really get that either. And then my friend did a PIP kind of similar to Anna's. And like, I learned a lot about gender, and I was like, hey, I actually feel like that. Oh, okay. So like, it made a lot more sense. It's so confusing, and if it was taught, which is so easy to say, but I do get how hard it is to actually put it in schools as well. But it's something that should be in schools, and it should be like in primary schools, which was set in 2010.
It's amazing how that social kind of influence both hampers it, because you've got those gender stereotypes, but also, you know, if you weren't kind of interacting with the world outside of your own bubble, you wouldn't know about those other identities that are actually possible, which is kind of that bittersweet aspect of it. It's kind of, how do we make those identities more available to young people in schools? Because I think that that's something that we hear quite a bit, is people coming out and saying, I never knew that this was a possibility until I hit year 11, until I hit year 12, and then I heard about this identity and I went, that's me.